Hi, my name is Mark and welcome to The Active Listener, where we aim to listen, not just hear. We firmly believe that everyone has an interesting story to tell, if given the space to do so. So listening to what our guests have to say, you may learn something. Welcome to Purple Day, and I'll pick on you first, Nicola.
So my name's Nicola Swanborough, and I'm Head of External Affairs at the Epilepsy Society. We do a lot of campaigning work. We try and raise awareness of epilepsy by getting stories about epilepsy out into the media to increase understanding of epilepsy. So it's quite an important role. And we also take care of social media and, very importantly, our helpline. We've got a UK-based helpline for people, anyone affected by epilepsy, that they can phone every weekday and into the evening as well on a Wednesday.
I'm Katrina. I'm the Community Fundraising Manager at Epilepsy Society. So my role is to support people who are doing fundraising events in support of our charity. And Purple Day is obviously a big fundraiser for us. So supporting lots of people doing challenges and events for Purple Day.
So I'm Tom Ryan Elliott. I am someone who has epilepsy, and I've had it since 2014, and Epilepsy Society have been fantastic. I've been to some of their big events each year to meet many other people who've had epilepsy as well, which has been great. So one to go to each year.
We've got Purple Day, March 26th. We know it's about epilepsy. So I guess the first point would be to understand a little bit about epilepsy, because I think people would have heard of it, maybe have ideas of what it is. I would imagine often the thing that they think of when they hear the word epilepsy is someone rolling on the floor, having a seizure, maybe foaming at the mouth, being out of control or something. So let's discuss, what is epilepsy?
As you say, I think, yes, people always associate it with the convulsive seizures where somebody falls to the ground. But there are over 40 different seizure types. And basically what holds them all together is neurons firing in our brains all the time. That is what makes us tick. But when you get an unusual burst of electricity in the brain, that is what can cause a seizure. And it depends where that happens in the brain as to what the seizure will look like and how the person will react. And yes, there are over 40 different seizure types. So it may not be the sort of seizure where you fall to the ground. It could be that you could still be conscious, but you're not aware of what you're doing, and it might be difficult to make somebody understand what you're saying. Or it could be a seizure where you just have sort of jerking movements or twitching movements, or you might go very stiff, or you might go very floppy. It's a very complex condition. At the basis of it is always seizures. I think we say that you have to have at least 2 seizures to be diagnosed with epilepsy.
Back in 2014, I went with a group of friends out into the US, over to the sunny world that is San Francisco, over in Alcatraz, and then went over to Las Vegas. And to be honest, from then, I cannot remember a thing. But looking through some of the pictures, apparently it was amazing. So I fell down 51 steps. The doctors within Las Vegas were forced to remove a large section of my skull. In the hospital over there, I was left for, I would say, about 5 or 6 months, and then was flown back to London and ended up with being in 4 different hospitals, and then finally back over to Charing Cross in Hammersmith, where they put a cranioplasty into my skull, which is a type of metal. When I was in hospital, obviously the hospitals deal with everything. They give you the medication that's needed. You don't have to do anything yourself. It was when first coming out of hospital and was with the family and friends, not having to deal with anything, the doctors. And I went to the fancy place called Wagamama with my sister and her boyfriend. Just thought everything was normal as it could be. And I actually did take my medication, just went for dinner. And all of a sudden, I had a simple focal seizure and simply just couldn't speak. And obviously, when you're in that situation, didn't know what to do. No one else had seen, well, my sister and her boyfriend had never seen a seizure beforehand. And obviously, some people around clearly could tell it was a seizure. So an ambulance was called. They came over. It was near St. Thomas's, near Waterloo. So the ambulance came and took me over to there. And as it was my first seizure, I had to stay overnight. And my mother was brought up from down in Guildford I've had to experience going around multiple hospitals in London. I think it is my experience to hit all of them in London. The fun thing about having epilepsy, been to them all, almost them all.
In regards to the seizure type, you mentioned a focal. Do you want to just explain a little bit what that is?
So, yeah, that's a simple focal. And that's where I'd say usually it's only 1 minute, 2 minutes. And I know exactly what's happening. Well, originally when it happened, I was so nervous and I would almost be really worried, and often that would make it worse. Now I've learnt that if I just stay calm, either sit down or lie down, just calm myself down. But often if I stress myself out, it could cause, or I think it could potentially cause a tonic-clonic to happen. And a tonic-clonic can be the result of falling to the floor, shaking, and then you don't remember anything because you're on the floor and an ambulance is definitely called. When it's a simple focal, an ambulance isn't needed to be called. It's just people around you are usually quite worried.
What did the people around you see?
To be honest, a lot of them didn't even notice because it's not a noticeable seizure. Sometimes some people do because you can twitch your face, which does look slightly odd, but it's always different. It depends. Yeah.
So you can't talk. Can you see what's happening?
Yeah, I can see exactly what's happening. And if I'm at home, I try and calm myself down, go near to my bed, because I think that's the safest place. Even if I'm sitting in a chair, I feel that even though it's currently or is going to be a simple focal, I worry that if I sit on a chair, it could potentially go to a tonic-clonic and I could fall off the chair. So I try and go to a bed just in case the worst thing happens, because I don't want to be near anything that could hurt myself. So I always try and stay safe.
I have epilepsy, and I also have something called a functional neurological disorder. One of the things I learnt was called riding the storm. And it's kind of recognizing, okay, I know what's happening here. I know what my triggers are. And just calm, do your breathing, start being aware of what's around you, deep breaths. You're not fighting it. You're recognizing what is happening and you're rolling with it. You're trying to keep it to a minimum. It's trying to remain calm. And as you say, being prepared so that you're mitigating against the risk.
Following just what you said, I found when originally finding that I had epilepsy following that first seizure, I'd always be so worried and thinking, oh my God, I've had that first one. And every week I'd be like, what if I had another one? What if I had another one? And when I felt that something was going to happen, just be so nervous and thinking it could happen again. And even if I did feel I was going to have a seizure, just overthink it was going to happen, and that often makes it worse. Whereas now, if I feel a seizure is going to happen, just sit down, relax, because if you overthink and think it's going to be worse, then I think it's going to turn into a tonic-clonic rather than just calming down and accept it's a simple focal or whatever type of seizures you're going to have, because I don't want to make it worse. So just accept, okay, I'm having a seizure, but let's just calm down and let it be how it is.
I think that what Tom is saying, it describes very well what we hear a lot on our helpline, is that the anxiety around epilepsy can trigger seizures, and also it can be quite isolating because people become so worried that they're going to go out and have a seizure and that nobody will be able to help them because seizure first aid isn't terribly well known. And so they opt instead to stay inside. And then that builds up to the isolation and depression and further anxiety, and it becomes quite cyclical. One of the messages that we like to get out, particularly on Purple Day, is our Calm Cushion Call campaign, which is a very, very simple messaging for people if they see it is largely around the tonic-clonic seizures, where you're convulsing and falling to the ground. But if you see somebody having a seizure, 3 very simple things to do: stay calm, cushion their head so that they're not hitting their head on the pavement or a hard surface, and call for help, call for an ambulance usually.
There's also like a lot of fear around it, isn't there? In terms of perhaps you as an individual experiencing a seizure and what that potentially could look like going forward, whether it's going to be worse or whatnot. But I think also from the point of view of people who've witnessed a seizure for the first time, it can be a scary thing. I know, Nicola, you were mentioning earlier there's like 40 different types of seizure, but invariably I think most people will think grand mal, or they may not call it that, but
Yes.
falling on the floor and whatnot.
In a nutshell, we transform lives through research, advocacy and care. So we have an information service. So we produce a lot of information via our website. Our website is like an encyclopedia of epilepsy, about the condition itself, about the seizure types, about how to manage them, and also about support for if you may be having to claim benefits because you're unable to work. Generally, unless people's seizures are controlled, they're not able to drive. And a third of people with epilepsy, their seizures remain, we call them refractory seizures, so they don't respond to medication. So they're having to live with seizures, which means they can't drive, they have to rely on public transport, which we know, unless you're living in a city, is often very sporadic. So, and that can affect your ability to work and support a family. So our website covers all that. We also have information leaflets as well, and our helpline is there if people want to ask direct questions. And then a big part of our work is our research. So we've got a research centre here at our head office in Buckinghamshire. And we are really at the cutting edge of research, looking at better means of diagnosis, which will lead to more personalised treatment. So we're using artificial intelligence and we're using genomics. And this is very much in research diagnosis, but we hope that will be translated into the NHS eventually. So we've got the here at our Chalfont Centre, we have the only MRI scanner which is dedicated to epilepsy in the UK. And then we have special 3D cameras which can look at the shape of the face and see whether they can find any underlying epilepsy. And linked with all that is the genomics. So we look at people's DNA and we're trying to work out whether there are, whether somebody might have a genetic cause for their epilepsy, and that can guide their treatment. So we are making a lot of progress. It's really accelerating at the moment, but there's a long way to go.
That's really exciting that there's so much going on and the work that you guys are doing. It'd be really good to understand Purple Day. Why purple? Why is it called Purple Day? And what actually is Purple Day?
Purple Day, it was actually started by a little girl in Canada. So back in 2008, a girl called Cassidy Megan decided that she wanted to create a day that got people talking about epilepsy and got people raising funds because she has epilepsy herself. She picked the colour purple because lavender often has an association with epilepsy. It's handy for us because it's our colour as a charity too. And what's brilliant is it started with that young girl and the world just took to it. And everybody now comes together on the 26th of March to raise funds and raise awareness of epilepsy. What is great about Purple Day for us is that our fundraisers agree that it's really important that we raise funds so that we can continue our work. But also it was really important to people that they raised awareness of epilepsy. So often we heard from people saying, do you know what, I don't think there's enough public understanding, and so many people that I speak to know nothing about epilepsy. So Purple Day gives people that excuse to get talking about epilepsy. And for some people, it's given them the confidence to share their own experiences of epilepsy. And that's fantastic that it has two huge benefits, Purple Day.
Well, it's almost as well that so it's about giving people a voice as well as raising awareness. It's giving maybe people it's an okay to share their experiences, which would then lead me back to you, Tom. So you've been diagnosed, you've experienced seizures, you've had the delight of visiting various hospitals. What impact has that had on you outside of the medication and the experience in hospitals? Has there been a stigma associated with it at all?
Yeah, I suppose just in general, it's the tough, annoying fact of coping with life every day, things such as medication. Actually, we're thinking back to it, was only a few days ago that I was out and about and forgot to take one form of medication, had to rush back home. I'm sure everyone with medication has always had that time where they're far away from home, looks in their pocket and it's like, I've left a piece of medication at home and has to rush back. Yeah, that happened. But also there's been cases where I've had a seizure at work. It's never something anyone really wants. It's not been great.
So has epilepsy had an impact on your work? Because you mentioned just now about a seizure at work. Has the epilepsy affected what you can and can't do?
When I received epilepsy, I also got aphasia, which is a speech and language disability. Many people know of aphasia as people who have got it after something such as a stroke, whereas I got mine after a brain injury back in 2014. And it just makes me have issues with simply reading, writing, responding to people quickly, which can make things a bit of a challenge and has caused issues with things such as work. Yes, so that's where it has made it a bit of a challenge moving forward.
Well, you're doing a grand job with having a chat with me, and I don't mean that patronising, so good job. So what do you do? What's your job?
Over the last 6 years, I've spent time within college learning both photography and videography, which everyone assumes photography and videography to be an easy thing. You just take a phone or a camera, click the button, you're done. But it's by no means that. I'd say taking a photo or a video is it's a quick thing, taking the video or the photo, and then mainly it's staying at home and editing. So yeah, that is something I really actually do enjoy. And while we're talking, I on my other screen have all the software running at the moment, editing those, because then I can sell it on to other platforms. So I am actually enjoying that quite a lot. And the hope is at some point to move into some form of organization that actually hires me because of that.
That's an interesting thing there, Tom, because I used to be a photographer and I also used to teach photography. I can certainly verify what you're saying. Photography is not necessarily the easiest road to go down in terms of workload.
No.
So yeah, it's not just about taking a few pictures as people often think. So in regards to your feelings about having a seizure, you mentioned earlier, for instance, you had a seizure at work. What was your feeling about that, and what was the reaction of other people as well?
I say when it first started, I was extremely worried. And each day I thought, oh, what if someone thinks because I've got epilepsy and aphasia, they just think I'm stupid. But I've slowly got used to that and think, well, I'm me. I can't change it. It's never going to change. This is me. If you think that, well, that's up to you. It's not up to me. I've just got to accept it and get on with it. I've just got to move forward as I should. I'm just trying to improve myself rather than improve what other people think I should do.
Part of the process is not so much what other people think, but moreover how you deal with it, what you think, and not being as perhaps concerned of the reaction of other people. How do you manage the epilepsy in terms of treatment? Is there a lot of drugs that you have to take?
No, actually, at the moment it's quite good. It's been 155 days since I had my last seizure. It's not too bad. I take only 3 pieces of medication, which are a lacosamide, a levetiracetam, and a zonisamide. But the lacosamide and the levetiracetam have stayed since I first ever found out that I had epilepsy. And the zonisamide changed last year when I had so many seizures for probably about 2 years, and the doctor decided to slowly change them into another one. And that stayed exactly the same since I was first switched over to that. And he said, I think it was only when I had a a few seizures with that, then he would slowly start to upgrade that if it wasn't working correctly. But yeah, as said, at the moment it's going quite well.
And in terms of the meds, is this something you have to remain on?
Yes, I'd assume so, because I think if I dropped them, I would get more seizures. Yeah,
there's a bit of a process. I mean, from my own experience, I know that it was in terms of getting that balancing act, and I was always kind of a bit reluctant because of the impact that can have. I was on sodium valproate initially.
I had that as well when I was in hospital, and just as I was about to leave hospital, there was thought that the doctor may get me off medication. But clearly, I think that was a bad decision if she did decide to take me off medication, because I would then have regular seizures. Yeah, so if you stayed on your medication currently?
Been off sodium valproate for a while, and they transferred me over. Now, I can never pronounce that. It's lamotrigine and levatic something or other, which I think you actually... Yeah, that sounds about right. I should know what I'm putting into my body, shouldn't I?
They make them the most difficult names possible.
I know, even looking at them here in front of me, I'm like, they're such long words.
I was very impressed that you got all those names out, actually, Tom.
Very, very impressive.
I was going to say that at the Epilepsy Society, that's one of the things, both your experiences of having to, this sort of trial and error of different medications and trying to get the best seizure control with the least number of side effects. And that's why we're trying to make it a much better experience for people, so that from the point of diagnosis, they can look at people's genetics and hopefully work out which will be the right drug at the right dose that will give the optimum seizure control, so that you don't have years of, say like Tom had 2 years of seizures before going on to zonisamide, which has helped control his epilepsy. So that is all part of our work, and it is very exciting work, but also quite slow and time consuming. But we are getting there. It is improving all the time. That's
encouraging to hear. Sometimes they just don't know why the meds work, and it certainly can, certainly for me anyway, it's quite an anxious time while you're trying all these different drugs. And certainly with the sodium valproate, it took about 18 months, I think, for them to wean me off whilst they were changing the other meds. And then it's that whole balancing act. One of the drugs I was on was giving other side effects, and so they had to lower the dose of that and then up the other one, and there's all this game.
At the Chalfont Centre here in Buckinghamshire, we have an assessment centre, and sometimes if people are really having problems with their medication, they'll come in and they'll be taken off all their medication in a very safe environment, and then they'll be reintroduced very slowly. And we'll do something called video telemetry, which is a bit like an EEG, but which you have over 5 days and 5 nights. So we can really look in detail at where the seizures are happening in the brain and what, getting really down to a granular level of what is happening. The technology is there, and we're also an assessment centre, a pre-surgery assessment centre. So sometimes if a neurologist can pinpoint the part of your brain which is causing the seizure, and that they can be absolutely certain that if they remove that part of the brain, that it won't affect, say, your speech or your language or your hearing or your mobility, then that is about as close to a cure for epilepsy as you can get if you can remove the tissue that is causing the seizure. And that is where we're also using artificial intelligence to read MRI scans where the human eye can't, it's not visible to the human eye, but we're teaching computers to read at a greater depth. So there are some exciting things happening which will hopefully bring hope for the future for people.
I'm guessing with all of this kind of stuff, money, funding is going to be really key. And I guess, Katrina, that's where Purple Day comes in, and I would imagine giving isn't just for Purple Day, but what can people do helping to fund things like research, or indeed if they want to get involved on Purple Day or any other day?
The great thing about Purple Day is you can fundraise in your own way. We've given you the excuse to do something and the date. And we've got sort of schools doing Wear Purple Days. We've got people taking on personal challenges of doing 26 miles of running on Purple Day. And then we have people who are doing things like head shaves on Purple Day. So it really is open for you to be as creative as you can be as to how you want to fundraise. Sort of organising a fundraising event or taking on a challenge isn't for you, then we really gratefully receive donations on Purple Day, because as you say, that pushes forward our work, and that helps us to be able to be there for more people with epilepsy and to make these huge advances in our research. So they're both really important ways of how you can get involved.
Day in itself is about fundraising. It's about raising awareness, about reducing stigma, perhaps giving a space for people to share, as we've discussed, their own experiences. So, Tom, why is Purple Day important to you?
It's such a big thing because it helps explain epilepsy to other people. Because as I said, most people don't understand at all. If you just say, oh, I've got epilepsy, to anyone else, apart from maybe close friends or close family, the main response would be, what is epilepsy? And apart from, oh, I have a seizure, again, their main response, what is a seizure? And really, how do you explain a seizure? Apart from, probably the easiest way is, oh, I have a tonic-clonic or something like that, but that just makes it sound even worse because, it's very hard to explain seizures and epilepsy as a whole in a simple way.
Are there other things that you can do to manage and make things easier? So, for example, you're taking the medication. You mentioned about remaining calm, and feel free, Katrina or Nicola, to chip in here as well. But are there other things in regards to like diets? Because I think certainly young kids, is it a high-fat diet is helpful? Are there other things like fitness that can make a difference?
You're thinking of the ketogenic diet? Yes, which is a high-fat diet, which is used for some children. It's quite a difficult diet to follow, and it needs a very experienced nutritionist to manage it. So that has to be done with a lot of medical support. And that seems to be successful in some children. They're not managing to get energy for their brain via sugar. But if you swap the fuel for their brain to fat, which breaks down to ketones, that seems to get across the blood-brain barrier better than the sugar. So it seems to be linked to genetics for some children. That can really help with the seizures. And it is tried in adults, but adults generally find it very difficult to monitor and to follow.
Doesn't mean that I can just live on ice cream.
No, sadly not. No. I mean, we know that anxiety and stress, not having good nutrition, not having regular meals, not having the right amount of sleep and exercise, all that can contribute to some people's seizures. So it's best to make sure, it's particularly when people go off to university, when youngsters go to university, they're having an independent lifestyle, and university is, it is all about staying up late and having a fair amount to drink, etc. And that can end up with seizures. So yes, it's having regular meals, making sure you get enough sleep, often avoiding alcohol as well. And the benefits of exercise, if your body is as fit as it can be, then that has to help.
And also when you travel, say if you have it at, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., your medication, to slowly transfer that over when you go abroad, rather than just when you go abroad, say to America, just have it at the exact same time next day. That's a big mix. I always sort of slowly merge it into the American time when coming from the from the UK to the US. That's what I do anyway, because it's still that gap. There's a big switch between the UK and the US.
So there's a lot to be thinking about. As a photographer, what's the deal with things like flashes and lights? Because often I hear, people mention about, oh, can you do photography because of the flash? Does that have any effect on you?
Not on me. A lot of people always say, oh, you've got epilepsy, you can't come in here. You can't come into a club, you've got epilepsy. But isn't it only like 1% of people with epilepsy have these conditions?
Actually, between 3 to 5% of people with epilepsy are photosensitive. Yeah, it's higher in younger people.
But everyone seems to know straight away when they hear epilepsy, oh, flash, you can't have flash. Yeah.
I think it's possibly the warnings that you get on the news, which they don't mention epilepsy actually, but they do alert people to the fact that there'll be flashing images. We have been having issues on social media with flashing images. The Epilepsy Society and some of our supporters, in actual fact, including Tom, were targeted by internet trolls who sent hundreds of flashing images directed, tagged with key epilepsy words to try and trigger seizures in people with epilepsy. So that happened, it's coming up for 2 years ago now, but it's been ongoing. And so we've been running something called Zach's Law. One of the first victims was a young lad. He was 8 years old with cerebral palsy and epilepsy, who was doing a fundraiser for us. And they targeted him. They targeted Tom because Tom had a seizure-free streak. And they will send really horrible, aggressive, high pattern, high flashing gifts. So we're trying to get that included at the moment in the online safety bill to make it an offence, to make it a specific offence, so that the criminal charges can be brought.
I'm shocked that people would actually have the nerve to do that.
They seem to think it's funny to send it to someone with, that disability and cause a seizure, to send them a gift that causes a flash.
That's wow.
As far as we can tell, they're operating outside the UK. We do report them straight away. The tweets, etc., are taken down. But yes, we do want the law needs to catch up with social media and make sure that the criminal charges can be brought.
Quite right too. That's horrendous. But it does sound like there is a load of positive stuff. So those people are hopefully in the minority, and a lot of people doing some research and being supportive, and medications evolving, which is great, different treatments, and you get to do cool stuff to raise money for charity. And certainly I get the pleasure to talk to people like you, Tom. Is there anything else you'd like to share in terms of your experience from the perspective of having epilepsy and Purple Day?
Our local MP, where we're based in Buckinghamshire, she's quite newly elected, and her name happens to be Sarah Green. So for Purple Day, she's changing her name to Sarah Purple to raise awareness. And that's really important for us because it's very important to push epilepsy up the political agenda. So we're really grateful for that. It's quite good fun, and I think our supporters will really enjoy that.
Green is the complementary colour to purple from an art point of view. So green and purple go very well together.
Oh, right. OK, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Both my favourite colours, green and purple match.
Yes, so perfect.
I think if people have learned a lot and enjoyed hearing from us today, definitely head to our social media channels and follow us on there. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're doing a post on Purple Day, so today, that we're encouraging people to share, because that is a simple action that people can take today. If they share that post, they will be spreading awareness of epilepsy. And if we can get that post shared as far and wide as possible, that would be fantastic.
Tom, have you got any plans to share your photographic skills with the Epilepsy Society?
Yes, I'll be happy to share many of my photos at Epilepsy Society for Purple Day.
Nicola, will you be dyeing your hair purple or putting purple face paint on or something?
Oh, right. Oh, that would be very nice, wouldn't it? Yes, I'd quite like to dye my hair purple, and it's something I shall think about, definitely.
One thing that is quite interesting about Purple Day is we're obviously 2 years on now from when we were all first locked down, and that happened just before Purple Day. So this for us almost feels like the first proper Purple Day for 2 or 3 years. It's particularly exciting to see people planning events, to be able to get together with friends, family, because we haven't been able to do much of that over the past couple of years, and Purple Day has fallen in 2 periods of restrictions. So this makes this year more exciting than ever.
I would agree with that. 2 years ago, as part of Purple Day, myself and a friend of mine named James Ketchell, who's done stuff for raising awareness of epilepsy before, we were due to walk from my office in Cambridge to my office in Paris. And literally it was, less than 24 hours before we were heading off, we had to withdraw because of COVID. And then we tried to do something the following year, but again, it was curtailed and we had to just do like some walks around near where I live. So it's really good that Purple Day is up and running again and people can be doing stuff. I'm not walking to Paris this time. I'm certainly not as fit as I was.
How about up to Scotland?
Well, I'm doing a virtual walk to Edinburgh.
Oh, come on.
But it is certainly not, I'm not doing the miles I used to be able to do, put it that way. But hopefully now lockdown is eased. Hopefully my fitness will go back as well. And then who knows, maybe there will be an opportunity to walk someone further than Paris. But I'm not committing to anything just yet. It's really great to have you guys on the Active Listener, and thank you for being so candid, Tom, in sharing your experiences, and both Katrina and Nicola for sharing the great work the Epilepsy Society is doing. And I look forward to seeing what everyone else is doing on Purple Day. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to the podcast. Until next time, remember, help people feel valued. Listen, don't just hear.